There's a very important documentary that is out in the theaters right now, and I would highly recommend that you see it. And that documentary is Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Won't you be my neighbor? It's an invitation to help somebody know that they're loved and capable of loving.
If in case you don't know who Fred Rogers or Mr. Rogers is, this is a film about a television show that started in the 60s. And it was just this little kids program that started in a television station at PBS actually, and they filmed it in a station in Pittsburgh. It was this very slow-paced show where this kindly gentleman would teach children the value of empathy and the importance of being kind to your fellow man and to your neighbors. And it was an emotionally intelligent show that a lot of other children's programming at the time back then and even today people don't have. And a lot of people who saw Mr. Rogers as a kid, they valued that show so much more than, let's say, your standard superhero cartoon or something like Bozo the Clown or something like that. And usually I'm not a big fan of documentaries that are about people who were famous and how great they were and things of that nature, because essentially it always just sort of feels like an advertisement for someone who just either passed away or someone who's still alive or someone who has some cultural importance. And yeah, it's great if, when they make documentaries about people like that, but this one's really important because of the time that we live in. This is a movie that I think if it came out when we had the Obama era, it wouldn't be as impactful as it is today, because now we went from a president who taught everyone love and peace and acceptance to someone who is showing children a very Darwinian kill or be killed mentality of life, and something that isn't good for their emotional development. It's all about taking down the other man, and we have someone who is an insane dictator. And I know mixing politics into a review isn't necessarily the right path to go with a lot of reviews, but you really can't avoid it with this film, because this film has so many parallels from the 60s to today that echo on. Mr. Rogers invited Francois Clemens on his show, who was a black man, and they put both of their feet in a swimming pool because back then they were not letting blacks in the swimming pool, and they were not letting them share the same bathroom, and of course there was so much separation then. And Mr. Rogers actually wanted to create togetherness, and through Clemens, he was an example of that. And the issues he tackled on his show were so complicated that he was able to simplify and have children understand issues like suicide, death, divorce, feeling like you're unloved.
He was always trying to get a message across in every show.
A week on death,
What does assassination mean?
on divorce.
Some people get married, and after a while, they're so unhappy that they don't want to be married anymore.
And of course, there's a very famous example where there was a young man who was on a wheelchair, and at that time, people didn't really have the handicapped on television. And he had this young man by the name of Jeffrey on his show, and he told him, it doesn't matter if you're on a chair or anything else, you're special.
But it's you
I like every part of
you.
your skin,
your
eyes, your feelings, whether old
or new.
And his message to everyone is you're special. And that doesn't mean when he says you're special that, you know, you're going to grow up to become rich or famous or, you know, a doctor or a lawyer or anything incredible, but you're special in your own unique way, no matter who you are. And there was some blowback that they showed from who other than Fox News in the film, saying that, you know, maybe Mr. Rogers' message of telling everyone that they're special wasn't the right message, because they grow up and they don't turn out to be what they think they're going to be. And all of a sudden they say, well, Mr. Rogers lied to me. He said that I was special. Why am I just a loser?
He didn't say, if you want to be special, you're going to have to work hard. And now all these kids are growing up and they're realizing, hey, wait a minute. Mr. Rogers lied to me. I'm not special. I'm trying hard and I'm not getting anywhere.
Well, that's not what he meant. What he meant was that whatever unique trait that you have, you know, that's you, and nobody else has that but you, and everyone has that trait. Whether you are rich or poor or black or white, it doesn't matter. And this feeling of acceptance and love is something that we don't see anymore in anything. He resented most of television. Most of what he saw on TV were cartoons like Superman, and that was dangerous because children were putting on like red capes and jumping out a window because they were thinking about fantasy and think, well, Superman can fly, I can, and then they would die. And that was sort of one of the catalysts that made Fred put the show back on the air, to teach the importance of fantasy and reality.
You take all of the elements that make good television and do the exact opposite. You have Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Low production values, simple set, unlikely star. Yet, it worked.
Mr. Rogers was really an artist. And we don't have enough of those through the form of television anymore.
I've always felt that I didn't need to put on a funny hat or jump through the hoop to have a relationship with a child.
It doesn't show Fred Rogers as this perfect godly figure. As a matter of fact, it does show some of his flaws. And the main flaw that that movie pointed out was with Francois Clemens. Fred Rogers didn't accept him as a gay man. Fred Rogers found out that Francois went to a gay bar, and he addressed it to him and he said, I heard you went to a gay bar, is this true? And Francois Clemens said, well, yes, it is true. And Fred Rogers said, don't ever go there again. So although he had this whole message of I accept you and love you for who you are, he had trouble accepting Francois for who he was. And it wasn't until 2 years into their relationship that he accepted Francois. They were sitting together, and Fred said to Francois, I love you and I accept you for who you are.
I said, Fred, were you talking to me? And he said, yes, I have been talking to you for years, but you heard me today.
And Francois just broke down in tears and hugged him. And this is a movie that will have you in tears because of how symbolic it is for how we need to love one another today. And it's a film I can highly recommend. I think it's one of the most important documentaries I've seen in some time. And I never thought I'd say that regarding an autobiographical doc, but this is an example of the right place at the right time. I think we'll see it around the Oscar season. And, you know, when you're done seeing Ocean's 8 or something like that, go see this film.
Won't you please, won't you please, please won't you be my neighbor?
Go see Won't You Be My Neighbor, and I hope you can subscribe. That's a terrible way to advertise my show. Please be my neighbor. All right. See, just thinking about it makes me all like loving inside. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. And hopefully you'll probably agree. And if you don't, tell me why. And please be nice when you tell me why. Okay. Thanks.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?